And was Ottawa successful?
Well, within a week, maybe less, all the mandates were gone. They said it had nothing to do with Ottawa, which is hilarious. You know, it's like, give credit where credit's due. No, politicians can't do that. Here's what I do know. We're way different than the United States, right? The vote for who is going to be prime minister is decided before it ever gets to my province, to West. And yet, the West is the economic machine that drives our country forward.
Are they funded by the government?
Yeah.
How is that even possible? So how is that even possible? How can your main source of media be funded by the government?
Good question. And there is a homeless man in a place that he should not have been. To this day in my city, I've never seen a homeless guy in the middle of the street like this. Where he was, there's tons of homeless, but not on this street specifically at that time. Whatever. And I drove by him, and he was in rough shape, and I was like, I'm not paying him up. Like, I was thinking in my head, like, this guy's gonna kill me, right? I was living in a spirit of fear.
Well, I guess I should ask first, like, how do you receive a signal from God? What does that look like for you? Welcome back to the NobleLore podcast with my friend and boss and teammate, however you want to describe it, Shaun Newman. Shaun Newman, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's great to, be here, I guess.
All right, I guess. So right before, I figure we'll just hop into whatever the hell we want to talk about, but this is normally a pretty relaxed kind of setting conversation deal. I don't really get too rigid about anything, but before we were on this, we were talking about teetotalism. And the
being a teetoddler. I personally think it's badass. I just think teetoddler doesn't sound badass.
It almost sounds like yeah. It sounds like something that you don't want to go to jail for, quite honestly. But
correct.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I don't know. I just like, to me, not drinking is, I put it in line with like having missing teeth. Like in hockey world, that's pretty badass. I think what you're doing is pretty badass. But calling yourself a teetoddler, I'm like, well, I don't know about that.
Hey, fair enough.
And now if you could tell me teetoddler comes from World War II and this is the background, then I would be like, well, lead with that and then say teetoddler, right? Or go teetoddler and you're thinking, you're probably thinking that sounds kind of weird, but let me tell you a story, right? I don't know. That's where my brain goes. I go teetoddler. What is a teetoddler? I think of tea with the with
sure.
the pinky finger. I'm
right.
a teetoddler, and it's like,
right.
okay, you're kind of you're too high for me.
Ah, okay, a little hidey tidy.
That's right.
Hotty toddy.
Hoity toity.
Oh, is that the Canadian expression or is that just the general?
I always just assumed it was the everything expression.
All right. So we were talking about not drinking. And we were talking about faith and Christianity at the same time. Actually, we're just gonna hop right into it. But so do you maybe drink, like you maybe have a cocktail here and there? Like how would you say?
I went out and played hockey last night, right?
Yep.
So last night went and played rec hockey, which is just, grown men. And I mean, anyone probably from 18 onwards, right, can play rec hockey, no hitting. It's pretty relaxed. I mean, there's tryhards out there, just like everything. And it's interesting because I came from playing hockey at a decently high level, right? To people who've never played hockey before, I played at a high level. To people who've played in the NHL, I didn't play that high of a level, right? Like you gotta.
Where's the metaphor? What's the metaphor that, like, where would you say at? Like, how can you kind of clarify?
Well, I played semi-pro.
Okay.
So I got paid to play in Finland, and to some that's amazing. To people in the hockey world, like it's a far cry from the NHL, right? I don't try and sell myself as a guy who almost made the NHL. I didn't.
Okay.
But I got to play in different parts of the world. I got to play very good hockey. I got to play further than a lot of people. I'm probably in a small percentage of hockey players that continue on after high school. And last night, as you get older, you play rec hockey. There's no hitting, and there's nothing like a dressing room beer. I try and I don't know how to explain it to other people, because if you've never played hockey, I don't even know what to compare it to, right? You can play baseball, but I don't know. They drink beer while they're playing. I can't do that. I can't play sports and drink. It's very strange to me.
Mhm.
I don't know what you do in basketball. I highly doubt you do it in volleyball. I highly doubt you do it in all these different sports. But in hockey, you go in the dressing room after and you have a sociable beer. It's like, you know, it's like one of the greatest beers you'll ever have. And can you do it with a can of Coke? You certainly can. And maybe a guy should try that. I've just been raised on. I went to the rink as a kid, and that's what the old timers used to do. You'd walk in as a kid, and they'd all be sitting there and telling stories, and it's very I don't know, like it's almost like a community spot,
It kind
right?
of sounds like sacred
They-
almost. Like
yeah.
it's yeah.
And if you're not a hockey player, you know nothing about it. And if you're a hockey player, you know all about it. And you're like, oh yeah, the dressing room, that's a fun spot to be. And you try on a hockey team as you get older, kind of like what Vance has done with bringing different people around him, right?
Yeah.
And we're talking pattern spotters, right? It's a sacred little group. Well, in a hockey team, in a very small sense, that's what it is. If you get a good dressing room, nobody wants to leave it because you got you got some old stories over there, and you got somebody over there, and maybe you got the class clown, right? You got a guy who's a bit of a comedian and makes people laugh, and it's pretty jovial. At times, you can have a little bit of music in there. At times, you don't need the music. It's just it's a special place, and it's part of the reason why I hope I play hockey until I'm 80. My oldest brother plays on a team called the Never Sweats, and they have guys that are 78 still playing, Jack, and they still sit in the room. They still share stories. They still have some laughs. They still drink whatever. It doesn't matter at that point. Probably doesn't matter at this point. It's just that sociable, and you sit in this dressing room and you have some fun, and I don't know. It's very healthy, I think, compared to maybe sitting on the couch and drinking 4 beers by yourself.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, I guess there's a few threads I could take down from there, but I guess I brought that up to say, when was the last time that you got drunk? Let's say.
I don't know, a month, 2 months. I actually don't know.
Okay.
I don't mean to say that in the sense that it hasn't happened. It probably for sure has. But one thing with having 3 young kids, and the stage my friends are at, like I don't get invited out to
Right.
bachelor parties. I don't get invited. Nobody invites me to the bar anymore, right? Like I'm not going to a Friday night at the bar. Like that doesn't happen. So it's when you are having sociable drinks, it's usually with the kids around, running around, and you got a parent. So you're not trying to get to the bottom of a bottle. You're having a sociable beverage, and then you got to carry on with your night, and you got to wake up the next morning, and you got to be a part of it. So I don't know. I never thought if you'd asked me that 10 years ago, I would have been like, oh, just 2 days ago. Now it's shifted and it's changed.
Well, I bring that up because what I think about is one of the topics or like a theme that we've talked about on a recent retreat that it was on is how do you receive signal from God? And so I'm tying in the faith that we were talking about. I'm tying in the alcohol we were talking about. I'm feeling pretty good about myself. I feel like I just kind of really tied those in really well. But
shout out to all the people that I did not see at this retreat. I miss you all.
That's right. Yep.
If they do in turn, in chance, listen to this.
We brought you up. We brought you up a couple times for sure.
Well, I appreciate that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So, receiving signal from God, and well, I guess I should ask first, like, how do you receive signal from God? What does that look like for you?
That's a tough question. I wish there was like an equation, like being a guy who likes math. I wish I could just tell you, well, it's 2x to this, to this, and this. You just solve the equation, and boom, Bob's your uncle,
Mm-hmm.
And that's not been the case in my life. When I came to St. Louis last year, I told Vance I didn't know if I'd be coming back, and it was a very abrupt sense of like I'm in the wrong place, and I don't mean that on the people. I think all the people Vance has with him are lovely people, and I don't mean this to make this all about Vance and the group, but I wasn't there this year. But I had this sense, and I prayed about it, and I was just like, this is really weird. Like I can feel it in the core of who I am, like I'm in the wrong place. And I talked to Vance about that when I was leaving, and I just said, I don't know if I'm ever coming back. And ever is a long time, so I'm very careful about that.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe this stage of my life, this season of my life, I don't know if I'm coming back. And the reason is 3 young kids, a wife. I've had my ups and downs over the course of the last 4 years, and I knew that my time was needed somewhere else. And it was a very I just couldn't get over the fact of the feeling I had. And so to me, that's God knocking on the door, being like, you can pay attention if you want, right? And that's one way. I don't know. I talk about I had this experience probably last winter, so about a year ago now, Jack, where I was. We have a group, a men's group that gets together real early on Thursday mornings, 5 a.m. And so you're out by 4:30, and I've been reading the Bible, and I've been really annoyed with it, to be honest, because I gotten through the Gospels, right? Like I gotten through Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. Jesus is alive. If you read his parables, they are like thought provoking every time you do it. And then he dies. And I know he rises, but then he dies. And it's just like a sadness. It happens, you go to something pop culture. You watch the Avengers and Robert Downey Jr.'s character, Iron Man, dies. Spoiler alert. And you're like, man, I've grown a relationship with you. I don't want you to die. And so there's just a sadness. So, anyways, this morning I'm driving, and I've been kind of like having an argument in my head about the Bible, and I was annoyed with it because I'm like, I don't want to continue reading. You're dead, even though you've risen. It's you can imagine I'm having this conversation. And at times I'm talking to myself, and at times I'm just I'm just having inner dialogue. Anyways, so I'm driving, and when I'm having moments like this, I pray. And so I started praying, and it's -40. It is a cold morning. And there is a homeless man in a place that he should not have been. To this day in my city, I've never seen a homeless guy in the middle of the street like this, where he was. There's tons of homeless, but not on this street specifically at that time, whatever. And I drove by him, and he was in rough shape, and I was like, I'm not picking him up. Like I was thinking in my head, like, this guy's gonna kill me, right? I was living in a spirit of fear. And I've heard very clearly, Shaun, you should probably pick him up. And I'm like, no, I'm not picking him up. But my foot had already come off the pedal, and I'm sitting there, I'm not picking him up. He's going back and forth. And so I turned around and went and picked him up. And I basically told him, I'm like, listen, man, don't kill me. You can imagine this guy is like high on something. It's -40. He is on his death throes. And I end up driving to the hospital. And he said, I say this every time I tell this story. I wish I'd written it down. But, it doesn't need to be written down. I have no idea what he said to me. But it had me in tears by the end because I told him I was having a conversation with God about him. And we started having a conversation. I'm having a conversation with God with a homeless guy who cannot open his eyes. Like, I mean, his eyes are closed. He's sitting there. He's in rough shape. And I drop him off at the hospital. And I looked at him as he's getting out, and I said, I think this was more for me than you. And he said, and then he opened his eyes and looked at me. And he's like, quite possibly. And then he walked away. I'm like, what the heck was that? And, like, to me, that's the beauty of God. Every time I try and quantify it, of like, it's 2 + 2, and you do this, and you stand on your right foot, and all of a sudden that isn't the way it works, at least in my life. I'm no rocket scientist, and to all your listeners, please don't take my words as the gospel or wisdom or anything. Just that for some reason, it's how it acts in my life. And when it happens, it's so evident, you can't miss it. And so you can chalk it up to like, oh, that was weird, and carry on with life. But weird, there's more to weird. Just like when a woman tells you it's fine, there's more to it than that. And you just got to do a little bit of digging. And so that's one of the ones that stuck out to me in the last year. And let me be very clear, that doesn't happen every day. It does not. But every once in a while, things happen, and you're like, holy Mackinac, that's something.
What do you think that conversation with God would have been like had your kids been in the car during that interaction going back and forth of, should I pick this man up or not? You think it would have been different?
Oh, probably. I mean, that's changing the entire equation,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, that's a giant hypothetical. I mean, you get in a car accident, and you don't have your seatbelt on, or you have your seatbelt on and you survive. You can play the, well, what if I didn't have my seatbelt on, but you did? I mean, at that time and that morning, my kids weren't with me, and we might have just piled them in and carried on. We might have.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like. If I left him, Jack, he was dead.
Mm-hmm.
I firmly believe that. It was cold. Like -40 is nothing to be trifled with. And this guy
No,
was
That's not. Oh, Lordy.
yeah. I couldn't believe it when I came around the corner and he was sitting there. It was straight out of like a horror movie, almost. Like like you're just like it's 4:30 in the morning. Well, it's 4:45 in the morning. -40. Guy in the middle of the road. Man, that'll stick with me the rest of my life, I'm sure.
So in like a scenario like that, where there are homeless people out in the freezing tundra of Canada,
Yeah.
is that like what you can do? Is that kind of a standard thing to do? Drop them off at the hospital and the hospital will take them in, or
No, once again, I don't even know the answer here. What I would say is where I live, homelessness increases probably through the summer months, right? You see more homeless. I mean, we get up to +40, right? At nights, it's probably +10, +12. So survivable is what I'm getting at. When you get to this time of year, so right now it's probably -5. I don't know what that equates to. It's probably what would that be? 20 something Fahrenheit, roughly, is my guess. But as you inch nearer to Christmas and certainly into January and February, like living here, if you don't have a place to tuck into at night, I don't know how you survive the nights. So, we don't. I mean, the cold just takes care of homelessness. That sounds very like ruthless, but it's just the truth. Like if you don't have a place to tuck in at night, I don't know how you survive where I live because it is that cold. So what I would say is usually people go west. They go to Vancouver where it's more mild. They head south. They head to different places other than Lloydminster. Lloydminster is not set up to have 1,000 homeless. I mean, Lloydminster, I think we had 200. The last number I saw was 200 and some homeless. And we're probably set up to house, I don't know, I'm probably off a little bit on my numbers, but, anywhere between 35 to 60 would be my guess. So, like, you can just see at some point you get to the second cold night. I can just imagine you got to keep moving, even if you're on drugs. At some point, you're like, I got to steal something and get thrown in the slammer, or I got to start heading to the West Coast, would be my guess.
So I just learned this. Does BC have a rainforest?
Oh, that's a good question. They certainly have forest. I've never called it a rainforest.
I don't know what constitutes as a rainforest, but this is what I've heard recently.
Did you Google that? Who told you that?
Someone just showed me, and I just kind of am a sheep and just listen to whatever people tell me.
I don't know. The Rocky Mountains have beautiful forests. There's some beautiful spots in there. Like BC is a beautiful province.
Let's see. Let's look it up. Does BC have a rainforest?
Google would never lie to you.
Close to 25% of the world's temperate rainforest is in BC.
No kidding.
Most of it is coastal, where you find the protected Great Bear rainforest. But BC is also.
Here's a Canadian who's never called it rainforest before. I think of rainforest like the Amazon. Like I think it's just like, ooh, that sounds nice. I don't know.
Well, this
never
is
heard it called rainforest.
So what's let me ask you. Let's go back a second. If you put your mic a little bit lower and move to your left real quick, what is that picture behind you there?
That?
That's right.
That's from Ottawa. That is
from when you say from Ottawa, for people that are listening that have no idea what you're talking about, what are you talking about?
Okay, so you guys have January 6th, right? Like, I mean, people probably look at January 6th and it probably triggers one of two emotions, right? Like insurrection or freedom people getting screwed. I just assume that's just me coming from a different country. Don't worry, I'm just a Canadian staring at it, and I have real no say. That right there was our what they labeled January 6th, what they tried to label as this insurrection. That was the Freedom Convoy. That was during COVID, all the mandates, the lockdowns. I assume I'm talking to mostly Americans right now. Um, you
Mhm.
know, uh, Take your worst state and times it by something, probably two or three, and you get Canada. Canada sucked during COVID. And it got to the point where, um, uh, you had snitch lines, you had vax passes, so you couldn't get into certain buildings without having a negative test or showing that you've been vaccinated. And
Snitch lines being you can tell on your
you,
neighbors if they have a
if
gathering or something like this, right?
correct, yes, it got to insane levels. And the Freedom Convoy left and went to Ottawa, drove. If you're listening to this, you should just pause it and you should go look up a map of Canada and everything I just told you about homelessness. All right, and why when it hits the dark months, you don't live outside. When it hits the dark months, folks, minus truckers, you don't drive across Canada. The reason why is we got one major highway. We're like second, third largest country in the world. We got one major highway. It is anywhere on this drive out to Ottawa between minus 25 and minus 40. This is not fun. And you're talking ice, you're talking blizzards, you're talking snow, you're talking just terrible conditions. And yet, it was the end of January. We were in a dark winter of mandates and just, it was not good. And so a group of people got together, drove to Ottawa. I chased them down in Ontario and followed them in. I got to ride in the convoy, et cetera, et cetera. I landed in Ottawa. And in Ottawa, um, imagine the most jubilant party you've ever been to, where you've been told for the last 2 years you have to wear a mask if you're around anyone. And all of a sudden, nobody's wearing masks. And you've been told you're not allowed to shake hands or hug anyone, or, I'm being a little bit hyperbolic, but not that much. And now everybody's crying and hugging, and it's just emotions. And there's kids and families, and they're calling us everything under the sun: Nazis, insurrectionists, everything.
Why?
But there's so many.
Why?
Well, because you're challenging the government, Jack. Why did they say that about January 6th?
Okay, so I guess when I say why Nazis, for instance, like January 6th, generally right wing people, right, and then the progressive movement or whoever you want to call them, clump the people that are right in with alt right and in with these types of people. Is that
What
the
is
same for
right wing
Canada?
these days?
Right wing is smaller government. I mean, you and I aren't going to disagree on this, but right wing is smaller government. It is nationalism.
Family
It's take
values.
away, not putting money towards foreign wars. Yeah, sure. Family values, Christian values. There's been a resurgence of that recently. More
Sure,
so than ever. But yeah.
I mean, but Muslims have family values,
Mm-hmm.
right? Different faiths have family values.
Hispanics, family. Yeah. Totally.
The reason I don't like right wing is I'm like, I don't like, to me, I've been called a lot of things over my time. And you go, why Nazis? Because there was one Nazi flag that was planted there, literally planted there. Then a camera guy took photos of it, and he was planted there. And then they went, oh, they're all white. They're here to overthrow Justin Trudeau, our fearless leader. They are all anti-vax. Wait, the guy who was leading the convoy was vaccinated, right? Like, it's just it's complete ineptitude of journalism to an nth degree that I can't even begin to understand.
And so
It's just
the
like,
legacy media picked that photo up and started blasting it across.
yeah, and then they talked about how we defecated on the war monument and how we defaced Terry Fox and war monument. You'll probably get Terry Fox is one of our beloved Canadian heroes who ran across half the country on one leg battling cancer and then died years ago. There's a huge monument to him in Ottawa. There's a huge one in Thunder Bay. And so they just talked about how these people were just like inconsiderate, and they were getting together, and we're in the middle of a pandemic, and you just play this narrative out. Meanwhile, you're sitting on the street, none of that is happening. So Terry Fox, this Terry Fox thing story gets blown up. Then people sat by the Terry Fox statue all night, every night I was there, and protect it. I talked to the cops there because the first day I was like, "What do you think of this?" And they're like, whatever." And they were kind of hemming and hawing, and I was kind of caught off guard by that because I thought they'd be like, "Oh, this is pretty cool." But it was the first full day, and in fairness, there was lots of horns and everything else. It was loud. There was people from all over the place, and we were being told we can't get together. Meanwhile, in the protest, in the middle of COVID, they all got together for Black Lives Matter. So, like, you do the math on how COVID doesn't affect those people. And, anyways, getting side tangent here. I asked the cop. We're sitting there talking back and forth. He goes, I'll give you this. This is the only protest. And we have protests in Ottawa. Ottawa's the capital city of Canada. Every week. He goes, this is the only protest where I've seen people come and clean up their mess. And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, last night, 1 a.m., a group of people came out and just started with bags, started cleaning the street. He said they picked everything up. I'm like, really?
That's the most Canadian protest I've ever heard in my life.
I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool. Well, I tell you what, it got better. It was like day 2. We had snow fall, and there was a person in a wheelchair couldn't get along the sidewalk. So then all of a sudden it was like, I don't know, 10 shovels got bought. I don't even know where they came from. And all of a sudden you saw the truckers shoveling the sidewalk. Then it became like kind of the cool thing to do. You had to shovel at least part of the street. So all of a sudden the streets were getting shoveled. You had garbage bags. They didn't deliver porta potties. They wouldn't give the protesters any porta potties. Okay, big FU to the group. They wouldn't take away the trash. So people started showing up, taking the trash away, and putting out new garbage bags. It was like this little encampment built around there that did the complete opposite of what the media was talking about. It was insane. You literally could have been from the CBC, our big broadcaster of Canada. You could have just sat there all week and just told the stories, and then turned around and wrote a book about it, and probably been a national bestseller. Instead, they did the complete opposite. So when I bring up January 6th, do I think there was some nefarious actors in there? Yeah, there probably was. Do I think that do I also believe there was some government nefarious actors in there? Oh, certainly. I mean, we had them in Ottawa too. I think you're naive to think that they weren't there. It's like, but how deep have you dug into the story? And how many people have you talked to about why they're there and what happened there? There's a story to be told in the United States as there is in Canada. Now, you asked about that picture. And it depends. How deep do you want to go into that picture? That picture is me praying to the Peace Tower, which is basically Parliament in Canada. It's during about day 4 or 5 of the protest. And it was captured by now pretty, I don't know, I hate to say famous photographer, but I would see pretty well known. I don't know what to say about Luciano, but Lucky Luch, he followed me around and ended up taking that picture. So there, that's a long meander.
How'd you get to that position? You're on your knees in front of it. What drove you to that?
I was crazy. I mean, that if once again, I don't know your listeners, so they don't know me. So if you believe in God, like you truly believe in God, then you're going to go, well, that means there's good and evil, and I don't know what that looks like for you. And I experienced for certain, I don't know, I would call it demonic forces. It wasn't very fun. I was also paranoid at the time. I was also, heightened sense of everything because of what was going on. And I'd met this photographer, Lucky Luciano, as I called him. I got told day 1 that he was Antifa. And I was, when I first got there, I'd never seen Antifa before. And you can imagine there was this guy with, a balaclava on, sorry. And I just walked up to him and started talking to him. And he pulled it down and he goes, Antifa? No, I'm just cold. It's minus 30, whatever. And I started laughing, right? So we just grew a little friendship. And he ran into me when I was pretty close to my lowest I was there. And I didn't realize he'd taken the picture. Actually, to be honest, I didn't realize that picture was real. because at that point in time, I thought I was kind of like in a dream state. I don't know how to explain it better than that, but just imagine the most vivid dream of your life, and one day you wake up, kind of thing. And it was 2 weeks after I got home from Ottawa that he sent it to me and said, "Hey, that day was something, and I just wanted to say I took this picture. Nobody will ever see it. I just thought you should see it." And I was like, I kind of compartmentalized that day as like it didn't happen. And it's taken, I just put it up probably, I don't know, in the last 6 months. It took a long time for me to have maybe the courage or maybe courage isn't the right word, just to feel comfortable with having it shown to people, because it is a very intimate moment in my life.
I bet that's one of the best pictures that was taken at that entire thing.
Well, there's some pretty good pictures taken there. This one means the most to me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you have to understand, folks. Before I went to Ottawa, I wasn't praying.
So what drove you to Ottawa in the first place? You were from Alberta. How long was the drive? And I mean, what even made you had a family at the time?
Still have a family.
Yeah, you still have a family, a wonderful family.
Well, like I say, back then, it was like being in a nightmare and not seeing a way out. Okay? If you haven't picked up by now, folks, that I'm unvaccinated, right? Which I hate even bringing up, because I think we have to find a way to mend these fences. But when we don't talk about it, or we only talk in certain circles about it, it persists. So if you go back to then, you have to understand, I'd had on military guys, and they told me how Bosnia happened. And Bosnia was a civil war. They'd hosted the Olympics, I want to say 2 years, maybe less, before they had the civil war, where, basically neighbors killed each other. And I said, how did that happen? And nobody can just say this is how it happened, at least not that I've found. But what stuck with me is they said, oh, it always starts with a small divide. Doesn't matter how small the divide is. If there's a small divide, it can grow and it'll get exposed, and people will do horrific things. So I get told that, and you already had a divide, vaccinated, unvaccinated. It was two camps. And they were starting to say things like the unvaccinated are piling up the hospitals and people can't get in. They're selfish, these people. I mean, go back and look at what, you can have your thoughts on World War II. You can have your thoughts on Hitler. There's a ton of stuff out there. But go look at the words they started using towards the Jews when they started to exterminate them. And in Canada, you were starting to see people talk about people who are being selfish, and maybe we should treat them differently. Maybe they should be in camps. I mean, the Toronto Star had, what was the headline? It was, I'm going to look it up because I want to make sure I get this right. So Toronto is one of the largest cities in Canada, and it had, I have no empathy left for the willfully unvaccinated. Let them die.
Who said this? Toronto
Star. And it's in the Toronto Star paper. Front headline. Okay. Now this is this was right. You're talking about papers literally saying let them die. So when you go, why did you go to Ottawa? You have to understand, this was destroying the fabric of our society. I wasn't allowed to leave the country. I wasn't allowed to get on a plane. I wasn't allowed to get on any federal transportation. I wasn't allowed to. They were starting to make it so you couldn't go across provinces in your own country. You go, what drove you to Ottawa? I'll tell you what fucking drove me to Ottawa. I wanted to drag Justin Trudeau out by his neck, hang him high in the sky for the world to see, and say, never again. Now, along the road there, I went, oh, I don't need that. I would just like to have the mandates off and be allowed to live life again. That has turned me into a right-wing conspiracy theorist, on and on and on and on and on. What drove me there was everybody knew it. Vaccinated, unvaccinated, take those terms, throw them in the garbage. They were tired with a tyrannical government who wouldn't listen to the people. And it showed. When the people got there, he got COVID again and he disappeared. And then he called us things and he kept saying things and he spurred it on. And then Coots happens. And then they take on, they put on, not the War Measures Act. Why can't I spit it out this morning, folks? Jack has me all riled up. They put on the Emergencies Act. They lock up people's bank accounts who donated anywhere between like $20 to some other sum to the convoy, right? You just like, we live in a fucking crazy world, pardon for the swears. That's what drove me to Ottawa. I didn't want to go. When I first interviewed Chris Barber, I said, that won't work. And it was like 3 days later, and I'm like, holy crap, this might work. And it was a day after that, I was in a vehicle chasing them down because I'm like, I got to see this for myself. Because I almost lost hope during that time. It's like, this is going to be my life. I don't know how to operate in it. To go to a hockey game, my kid's hockey game, I got to be vaccinated, or I got to have a negative test for the rest of my life. I go to an Edmonton Oilers game, I'm wearing the fucking mask, and it slips down. Okay, it's on your nose, slips down to there. It's still over my mouth. 2 security guards come up and say, "Sir, you do that again, you're out the building." I'm like, and we're going to be okay with this? This is how society's going to be? Have we all lost our bloody minds? That's what drove us to Ottawa.
And was Ottawa successful?
Well, within a week, maybe less, all the mandates were gone. They said it had nothing to do with Ottawa, which is hilarious. It's like, give credit where credit's due. No, politicians can't do that. Yeah, it was very successful. And along the way, some very good people have been paying the ultimate price for going there. And it's really taught me that lesson is, if you're going to stand up to the government, which is a giant machine, folks, you really have to come to terms with what are you willing to lose for that, right? Like, you can't be naive about it. I was naive about going to Ottawa. I had no idea what I was doing. I thought I was a citizen journalist and going to go have a little bit of fun. You're standing up to the world, and if you are if you do any reading on the WEF and the World Economic Forum, and some of the treaties there and what they're trying to do and how our government is involved in that, you realize you weren't just fighting the Canadian government. You were fighting possibly the one world government, which sounds insane to say, but the truth of the matter is, just look at the ties. Look at what is going on in our country right now. I mean, it's pretty evident that foreign influence wants something different from Canada than what Canadians want.
And so when you came back home, how did the general community accept you back in? Was it hard to? Were there a lot of people that disagreed with you, or were you welcomed with open arms?
To this day, there are certain people who will not look me in the eye. And to this day, there will be people I've never met in my life walk right across the room, and you can tell they want to come shake your hand. And they shake your hand, and then they have a lovely chat. And I don't give much time in my life to the people who won't talk to me because, usually they're people I see once every 3 years. So, I mean, why let those things bother you? We have issues in our country. And I don't let me, by getting all wound up today, act like I have all the answers. I don't. I really don't. It's just been interviewing and staring at different people from across Canada trying to figure out what the heck is going on in society. Like, why are we doing what we're doing? And to me, at times, if you don't listen to me, right, you don't listen to the interviews, you get labeled right wing, you get labeled misogynist, a Nazi, all these different things. Lately, a Christian, which I guess is a pretty tough label too, right? Oh, you're one of those. Sure, I guess. And I just carry on with life. There's no point in getting tied up into that world, except for when the government is that world. That's what COVID was. That's why everybody went to Ottawa. That's why Ottawa was crazy successful. It was, I don't know. It should go down in the history books as the most peaceful protest in modern day history. Like, it was insane.
It's quite an example of what a good protest looks like. So when I think about people that won't even look you in the eye, I think about America and I go, 50%. Let's just use Trump as the conduit
catalyst
here. Yeah, the catalyst, kind of whatever you want to call it. 50%, hey, despise him. 50%, borderline worship him. But when I think about Canada, I think, are there people that are like, how is Trudeau getting back into office? Am I just in an extreme echo chamber by working with you and seeing all of your guests, or is there a divide there?
Probably somewhat, yeah.
And who's voting for Justin Trudeau? Like, what kind of a Canadian is
the East, right? Like, okay, if you want to be a conservative government, right? Smaller government, you're going to cut some programs, et cetera, okay? Well, if you work in those programs, you're a firefighter. Do you want to elect a government who could possibly take away your job? The answer is no.
No.
So you go, people are, I hate the word, but it implies, I think it gets across what I mean, are selfish, right? If all of a sudden I could vote for the CBC to just disappear tomorrow, being in this media landscape and understanding what they do, I probably would vote for that.
Survivor bias. That's like the term for it. Yeah.
Sure. So you go, like, the East, I'm working on this. So I'm working on getting better at understanding the political structures in Canada and how they all work. Here's what I do know. We're way different than the United States, right? The vote for who is going to be prime minister is decided before it ever gets to my province, to West. And yet the West is the economic machine that drives our country forward. We have oil, we have mining, we have agriculture, we have all the resources. We are sitting on some of the largest resources on the planet. What do you have out East? You have bureaucracy. You have old established elites. They've been there, like, if you go back in the history of Canada, where did they establish? They had Upper Lower Canada. That's all out East. They've been there for forever. And the cartoons say it best. They, you take a big straw and just draw it across the country and put it into Alberta, Saskatchewan, and they're sucking it out that way. Right? Like, I mean, would you vote against how the government's doing things right now? I guess if you have, if you're staring at some of the things going on morally, you probably will. But if you, are in government, or if you are, like, you like some of the social aspects of what he's doing, free dental care, free child care, right? All these free things. And it's not free. Like, we all pay for it. And so who votes for it? People who probably look at it that way. And, like, I could be wrong. Maybe there's some other things he's doing out East I don't know. Out West, it's like a swear word. Like, I mean, the guy in one of his national addresses literally forgot to say Alberta. Said every province, didn't say Alberta. I'm like, that is pretty telling right there, right? Like, this is wild to me. Yeah, he touts himself as all these different things, but you're for sure in an echo chamber. Like, you're talking to now, I was born and raised a Saskatchewan kid, now an Albertan. Alberta is the Texas of the North, or the Florida. We resemble kind of both of them. And we got a premier who's telling them to shove it right now. And so, if we could, we'd probably have open carry. We'd probably, I don't know, do a ton of things that Florida and or Texas is doing. We'd probably do it all. It's just different here in Canada. I'm trying my best to learn all the ways it works. It's just different because we stare at the States all the time and see how you guys work and go, well, that's a really good system. We should adopt that. But we don't have that. We have a prime minister who can be elected in forever. And that's a scary thought.
Huh. Is CBC, so that's like our CNN or Fox News or ABC or MSNBC or whatever, any of those?
Yeah, but not really, because
are they funded by the government?
Yeah.
How is that even possible? So how is that even possible? How can your main source of media be funded by the government?
Good question. Now you can understand why when the Freedom Convoy went on, they didn't show up to do any interviews on it. They're owned by the government. And, like, that sounds like way too simple of an answer. Like, come on. Like, obviously they could do some stories. Sure, they could. But like, they're literally going out of business if it wasn't for the government giving them billions of dollars to stay running. And even then, they've had to do serious cuts. They're an arm of the government. It's really sad.
I find it so I just can't comprehend how anyone anyone that even has a tiny bit of history could understand how the government owning the media is okay. Your main source media is okay. I don't understand
how rare of a country you live in.
It's
like the United States
damn
is
right.
It's rare. Like, this isn't. So you say that, and I agree with you. But if you look around the world, what Canada's done isn't a rarity. It isn't like we're the only country with a government-controlled state media.
I guess I considered Canada to be much closer to the United States than to Kenya, right, or something like this.
Well, sure, okay. In that sense, yes. Cultures, norms, etc., similar. Okay, we're socialist. Like, we're a socialist country. We believe in free healthcare, and for the longest time in my life, I believed in that. I think I still, some part of me believes in it, but there are some serious issues that come with it, and we're seeing it play out right now.
Well, we have a mutual friend, Twos, whose mother didn't get the treatment she needed in time, right, and passed away because of it.
I got my father right now. He needs shoulder surgery, and the wait to get in is like 2 years. 2 years. Okay. Right? You wait all your life, you're a healthy human being, you never use the healthcare system, you finally need it, it's 2 years? So what are you supposed to do? Go around with a bum shoulder for 2 years? Whereas, so what do they say? Well, maybe you could fly to the States.
Is that what they say?
Well, certain people.
Or pay very expensive treatment.
Yes.
If you want to go get it privately, right?
Yes. So like, I don't know. We're a socialist country. Like, people want free healthcare, free childcare, the childcare benefit. I'm like, you morons. I want lower taxes.
Yeah.
Why? Because then I can go pay for whatever the heck I want to pay for. Not tax me to oblivion, give all the money to Ottawa, and then they'll disperse back a little bit to us. Like, it's a simple equation. To me, that's the simplest math there is. We want autonomy. We want to be able to govern our lives. Do we want some help along the way? Like, I don't know, road to town and hiring doctors. Sure. But like, get out of my way. Stop doing what you're doing. But as I say all that, I know I'm in a small portion of the population, right? Because lots of people, free healthcare is great. Free this, free that. It's just,
What is that? Yeah, what is that about culture that's making everyone want everything to be free for some reason? Like, what does that say about the culture now? Why do you think that is?
That's a good question. I think when times are good, you just don't you don't engage. I just had an uncle pass away. And I had to officiate his funeral. Well, it was, a weird thing on this side, Jack. I didn't start podcasting to officiate funerals, and now it's my fourth in probably a year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
And my one of my uncles said to me, I've lived in the best time in human history, and you guys are inheriting some of us not paying attention. Because like there's some pretty crazy things going on in your country and in ours. And I can just say from where I'm at in my community, to go out and make good money is not a hard thing to do. Like, I can hit a good paying job with a fly swatter. Mm-hmm. It's, we live in oil country, in ag, in mining. If you got a heartbeat and you show up to work, you're going to earn a paycheck. You're going to earn a very good paycheck. And if you do that for several years, chances are you're going to move up the ranks in the corporate world. Why? Because for some reason, people don't want to do that. They want to sit on their, I don't know, they want to go to Mexico and do nothing. They want to sit on their phone and do nothing. I don't get it. But in fairness, you asked why. I mean, it just seems like times have We've moved away from world wars. We've moved away from, like in the last 100 years, you used to have to like go to, you had to work to survive. Now, survival isn't on nobody's thinking about survival. They're stopping if they're hungry, they stop in a McDonald's, they stop in a convenience store. They're cold, they walk into their house anywhere they want and they're warm. And so I would say that we're at a point in time where the government will just take care of it.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
part of the mindset. And we've created this beast that is insane.
Well,
Literally insane.
the more it kind of makes me think, the more opportunity we have to complain, the more that we will complain. Like, just that is as simple as that. Have you ever heard of the study of the two monkeys, and one of them gets one grape and the other gets two grapes?
No, but I love it already.
So there's this experiment where you have two monkeys and you give each of them one grape, and they'll happily eat the grapes. But as soon as you give one monkey two grapes, maybe they were chimpanzees. As soon as you give one chimp two grapes and the other only one, the chimp that received one grape will not eat it because it recognizes that there's an unfair balance here. And that kind of reminds me of a quote. It's that we are half gods, half monkeys. And I think, when you think about how we act as humans, I think if we all had $1 million of spending power, as it is, right? So don't account for the fact that if everyone has it, then it's meaningless. Like, if we all had $1 million, I could go out and buy all the cars I needed, the house I needed, the food that I needed. Every single one of us had $1 million, but there was 100 people that had 100 million people, or $100 million. Like, people would find that to be unjust, and they would go out and protest, and they would go out and riot, and they would go out and still find problems in our society. I just don't think it's possible for us as humans to not see something that's unfair, even if we're doing okay, and be okay with it.
Cain and Abel.
Say more.
Well, I mean, you just there's something in humans that you're gonna, that you want what your neighbor has.
Mm-hmm.
So, this isn't something new. This is as old as time. But I always look at the United States, and what made the United States, I think, great and something to be fought for, honestly, is it was a place where if you put your head down and got to work and were creative and thought about things and you could make something of yourself. You still can, I think. And Canada, in a sense, is a small microcosm because of the United States.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't just act like that's going to always be there because it's slowly being pulled away from us. And I'm talking Canadians. I can't listen. Folks, I cannot speak to I have a hard enough time with the intricacies of Canada to even begin to comment on the United States. I just understand what it stands for. That you could show up to a country and go from being poor to wealthy in a lifetime, or shorter, is something that should be fought for. And Canada is the same way. You can literally come from pretty much nothing in Canada. And if you like a little bit of common sense and like just show up to work. Like, what a crazy idea. Just show up to work. Show up to work. Do your job. Pay attention. Activate. Find something you enjoy doing. All of a sudden, you can make something of yourself. There's opportunities. They're endless. And both of our countries definitely have that. I don't know what, it could be the 10,000 things that are, I don't know, against us, like you love the chimpanzee study. I love rat studies. I think rat studies are just fabulous. It's like, I've probably told you this 10 times, so apologies, but like, how do you get a rat to be addicted to cocaine? Have I told you this?
I think I'm vaguely familiar with the study, but go ahead and explain it.
Well, you put a group of rats and a tub of cocaine in there, and they won't touch it. They won't do anything with it. You isolate a rat, they'll do cocaine. And so you go, part of what's happening in society as we go more into technology, and I'm starting to learn more on the blue lights in our screens and that's effect on the human body and and you tack on COVID, you tack on just, how we communicate. It's unhealthy. Like, why do I like the dressing room? Probably because, to go back to an early part of our conversation, because it's a lost form of our world, of our country, of sitting around, no phones, having some laughs, talking to people. What a strange idea. And it's healthy for you. I don't want to be addicted to drugs. I don't want to be addicted to my phone, and we think of drugs probably as a
Substance,
as a
but could be anything.
substance.
Yep.
It could be anything. And I think the way you get away from that is by having healthy relationships. People who want the best for you, people that you can talk to and not be, I don't know, used or abused, right? There's tons of relationships, there's tons of things going on in this world that just, honestly break a guy's heart. And all you can do is, like, be a good human being. I watched a movie with the kids the other day, Claus. It's a cartoon about Santa Claus. It's about a postman who gets sent to this like village where they've had a family feud for, I don't know, history. And this postman is kind of an entitled kid. And he gets sent to the edge of the world because his dad's frustrated with him. And so he goes there, and Santa Claus, or Claus, lives there. And he's this older big man who builds toys. And I mean, it's a wonderful movie. But what he says is, one act of kindness will spur on another act of kindness. Like it's like a, and I'm like, man, that's a beautiful, beautiful thought, right? If you just try and be good, you just try and like hold the door open for somebody. Just a simple thing. You can change their entire day.
That's right.
And then maybe they go change somebody's entire day. And all of a sudden it just starts to, like snowball. You do that every day. See what I'm not sitting here saying like all of a sudden the world's going to change, but like on the flip side, what's the alternative? You become this brooding person who doesn't talk to anybody, doesn't smile, doesn't go anywhere, is online all the time. You know what I want to do? I want to get to the point, Jack, where you're like, I want to do an interview. And I'm like, just fly up here. I got a private jet. You just come here and we can do it in person.
Amen.
That's what I want to get to. Because doing this online, although be it fun, in person, there's nothing that even remotely touches it. You cannot begin to fathom this is, I think today I record, you know this better. Is it 749 I have tomorrow? I think it's 749. 749 episodes.
749 tomorrow, yeah.
And if you tack on everything else I've done, it's close to 1,000. I give away all of them just to be able to do it in person if I could have my guest list. The problem is I'm not there yet.
Yep.
But, once again, you got me rambling, and I don't know, though. To me, it's a culmination of a ton of little things of where we are today in this world.
There's two things that you kind of mentioned there that made me think about a couple of things, of like, one of them being that the idea of just simple kindness. And I mean, not only can it just make someone's day, I mean, you don't realize, like, I think most people don't realize that, like, giving someone a smile and asking them how they're, like, a stranger, how they're doing, could stop them from killing themselves that day. I mean, there are, little acts of kindness make extremely large ripple effects. And it makes me think about, you think about McDonald's, or you think about Tim Hortons up there. Right. And imagine that worker that's working at the window, and every single person that comes through that line is, hey, thank you so much. I hope you have a great day. Hey, thank you so much. I hope you have a great day. Hey, thank you so much. You have a great day. They're going to walk away from that job, even though they're working at the window at Tim Hortons and they're 35 years old and don't have a life trajectory. They're going to walk away from that job, at least with some sense of fulfillment, and the fact that, like, there were positive human interactions going on today. And it only takes one bad interaction for that to ruin someone's day. So, yeah.
I was reminded of a story. Sorry to hop in, because you said two things, right?
Mm-hmm.
So don't forget the second thing.
I think I've already forgotten it, but I'm going to try to remember it again.
Okay. So before I ever got into the talking to doctors, lawyers, politicians, on and on, I had this lovely story told about me. Now, what's funny about it is now some of the people who would have called me this person no longer talk to me. So it's kind of funny, if not in a morbid way, or maybe in a morbid way. But it was a story of a guy coming to Lloydminster. moving from a different community. And an old man asked him, "Oh, well, where did you live before?" And he says, "Oh, a town over here." And he goes, "Oh, what was your town like?" It wasn't very good. People were kind of unfriendly, whatever. And he goes, "What's Lloydminster like?" He says, "You'll probably find more of the same." And then the next day, another new guy comes into town. An old man meets him. He goes, "Yeah, how you doing?" "Yeah, good." "Where are you coming from?" "Oh, this town." "Oh, how was it?" He said, "Oh, miss it. People were friendly. There was a great community. What's Lloydminster like?" And he's like, "You'll probably find more of the same." And I got told I was the second guy. And then I started talking openly about COVID, and I've never been able. Nobody can remember that story. I think it got written in the paper, if memory serves me correct. Right? And what you're talking about, or with the kindness thing, is it's like that's it. You can choose to be what you want to be every single day. One of the great things God has taught me, I think, is you don't need to go to Thailand to have an adventure.
Right.
You walk out the door every day and you pay attention, you will have an adventure of your life. You can run into somebody who completely can change your life. I just literally had it happen. I don't know if I've told you this. I wanted to build a studio out on the farm for I don't know, probably 2 years. I've been trying to find a way to muster it through. It just doesn't happen. I kind of gave up on it. I just kind of it's not going to happen. And then I had Jamie Sinclair in here. You're a fan of Jamie
Oh
Sinclair?
yeah.
And he goes, "You want to go for a beer at OJ's?" And I go, "Original Joe's is I don't know, kind of like a pub, I guess." And yeah, sure, whatever. So we go and we're sitting there. It's in the middle of the afternoon. There's nobody in this place. And in walks Jonas. Jonas and I grew up together. He was our next door neighbor as a farming community, and now he's a big farmer. And I go, "Oh, hey, Jonas, how's it going?" And just sit there chatting with him. "Oh, this is Jamie Sinclair." And well, just pull up. "No, I don't want to intrude." "No, Jonas, just come sit and have a beer with us. There's nobody else in the bloody place." So he sits down and we start talking. And Jamie doesn't know what he's doing. Jamie goes, "Whatever happened to your idea of building a podcast studio on the farm?" I'm like, "I don't know. It's a whole thing. I'm not interested." And all of a sudden, I look over at Jonas, and me and him kind of meet eyes. And then we start talking. And pretty soon, he's got a spot. And I'm like, "Oh, this is about as serendipitous as it gets." I'm like, "What?" And now, I was just out there yesterday. I have an A-frame house, A-frame cabin. It's pretty small, but we're gonna renovate it. And then there's a second building, and we're gonna turn it into a studio. So when Jack comes next, folks, there's gonna be a place. It's gonna take some time, but there's gonna be a place to stay, and there's gonna be a studio that, when it's done,
Hell yeah.
is going to rival the Tucker Carlson, the Joe Rogan of the world, sitting in, as Vance Crowe and others would say, on the edge of the world.
Mm-hmm.
That is the truth. It is going to be the outpost. It is going to be in the middle of God's country. And things like that, if you just pay attention and don't force it. I wasn't forced to anything. It's like you can have an adventure every day. Like every single day, I step into this place, I walk out my front door, and I truly believe, if you just open your eyes, in my world, a little positivity, kindness, a little selflessness, you just try and do better for other people, you might be surprised what happens.
That's right. You can have an adventure in your mind and in your spirit. You don't need, you think about someone that's paralyzed or in a wheelchair. I think what you're saying is, even they can go on an adventure still to some degree. Just they show up in different forms.
I would agree.
Mm-hmm. So what's I'm realizing that these need the value of something like a Joe Rogan is 3 hours. Like I have about probably 3 to 4 more hours of talking content with you. And we got a little bit more time, so I'm going to keep you around for a second if you don't mind.
No, 100%, Jack. The next time, if you're like, we got to do 4 hours, even if we don't, we just schedule it 4 hours. Right. I always schedule 2 in my head because I'm like, two is going to be the standard. Jack's going to get annoyed with me at some point. His audience is going to turn me off, and that's fine because as you know, I can talk for a very long time.
You know what? It's as counterproductive as it sounds to say. I don't really give a shit about my audience turning anything off because I know that the conversation that we're having is always intriguing, to say the least.
Well, I don't think that's rude to your audience. Used to say that lots. If the audience doesn't like it, they'll turn it off.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not being rude to the audience. If I'm enjoying it, there's going to be a whole bunch of people that are enjoying it, and you just carry on. And if there's a natural break, but chances are what'll happen is you'll cut it out, and it doesn't matter how long I go with any person. Any person. I bet you Joe Rogan doing his no, it was Friedman who did an 8-hour podcast, right?
Yeah. Both of them have done, yeah.
And I guarantee there's somebody out there going, I wish it would have went 20 minutes longer. I guarantee it. And then there's a whole group of us going, 8 hours? How the heck am I going to get 2 hours in? You're talking about 8. Like I just had Dr. Jack Cruz on, and he did close to 4 hours with Danny Jones. And I'm like, how am I going to get 4 hours in? It was a wild 4 hours. And for me, we went an hour and a half, right? It's almost like child's play. So once again, I guess my comment on you not worrying about the audience, you are worrying about the audience, because if the conversation sucked, maybe I'm patting myself on the back here, folks. You could just shut it down,
right? Right. Yeah. No, you're completely right. I think a few months from now, I'll schedule out another one with you, and we'll go for 4 hours.
Well, I'll see how many people I've irritated on your side, and we'll see how that goes.
I'm excited for them to listen to this. So, yeah, maybe let's do. My camera just died, so I'll wrap this up anyway. I was starting it.
Well, no, you can't. Now I got 29 minutes. My brain. He's like, oh, my technology failed me. Oh, it's not going to look great. Oh my goodness, folks.
My camera actually died.
Now you know what working with Jack is like. Hey, he's like, hey, could you adjust your camera just to that way, to this way? You didn't plug it in?
No, I didn't. I have not been plugging this in. I've normally
welcome to the wild world of podcasting, folks, where Jack starts to feel some of Shaun's pain, because this has happened to me many a time.
Oh, I know it. Well, luckily we've got this going, so I'm gonna keep it going. But what do you think? This is kind of one of my final questions that I normally ask, that I've asked every person, is like, what should young people be paying attention to right now in the world?
Oh. I'm going to surprise myself here a little bit. I think don't take at times you got to take things very seriously, and other times don't take things too seriously. I don't know if that makes sense.
How in the F am I supposed to know when I'm supposed to take something seriously and when I'm not?
Well, okay. So one of the things I'm paying attention to right now is World War III.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I mean, Biden just allowed long-range missiles to be used on Russia. Okay. And if you're not following that, folks, careful, because you're going to need a Family Guy episode or something to make you laugh after. Family Guy used to be my go-to in college. I don't know what people watch now to make them laugh, but
Family Guy's up
regardless,
there still.
You can get wrapped up in we're going to all get nuked tomorrow. And if you get wrapped up in that world, you can go literally crazy. I've seen people lose their mind off of chasing rabbit holes and everything else. So I think it would be wise to read the news, pay attention to world events, and see what's happening. You might also notice that Bitcoin is like all-time highs. Gold, all-time highs. While other things, money printing and everything else, all-time highs, right? So, like, there's things to pay attention to. But at times, you know, depending on your age, sometimes just enjoy life too, you know? Like, I don't know. There's seasons in life, Jack. Wife and I were watching a show. It's about college. And she asked me if I'd ever go back to college. And I laughed and I said, no. Like, no. And I said, well, why? Would you? And she said, well, no. So, and then we got talking about, like, I got told high school would be the funnest time of my life. So I lived it like it was going to be the funnest, because I thought after that it was all done. And then I went and played junior hockey. And I can tell your listeners this. There are few experiences like junior hockey. It is, man, it's a lot of fun. But then came college. And college is where I met my wife. College is a lot of fun. And now I have a wife, 3 kids, and I've found a lot of the meaning of life. I'm not saying I got it all down pat by any stretch. But, like, I wouldn't change any of this for anyone. I don't, I have to fight every day for my kids, my wife. I have to constantly be better than the guy I was yesterday, because the challenges of having kids and dealing with their schedules, their issues, their lives is something I could have never planned for. And I wouldn't change it. This has been, like in the last year, we did 24 days on the road together. We took a road trip through Idaho. Everybody thought we were insane. It was the greatest time of life. I didn't need anybody else. Didn't need all the fans. Didn't need friends. I meant didn't need 12 nights of boozing out at the bar. We like, it was just family and being around my kids and my wife, and like, you find that. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, I mean, sure it does. There are a few things that I admire quite a bit about you, Shaun, that I don't find it very rare for me to admire in other people. And one of which is, well, several of which are, if I were to characterize you, good man, good father, good husband, and it's, like, you're someone that has all three. And it really, honestly, I do not find people like that quite, often at all. One of the key characteristics that I look for in like a relationship that I noticed when I was visiting you and your family is like, you kiss your wife, and that to me is like really, really a big indicator that I do not see a lot in people. And so I think I'm just
Can I
pumping your
tell you
tires
something?
here. Yeah.
It didn't happen accidentally. Now I mean that very spiritually, but I also mean that like in day-to-day life. My
Mhm.
my wife Mel is not a PDA person. When we
Mhm.
first met, she did not like kissing in public. And I told her, if you're going to be with me, we're going to kiss in public. I had to get through some uncomfortable conversations. Where I'm at with my wife and kids today did not happen accidentally. I've had moments. I bet if you talk to any happily married man, take the person you think is the happiest person, marriage, life, kids, and you talk to them, I guarantee you they've had days, if not weeks. No, I'm going to say days, not weeks. I'm going to say days where they weren't sure they were going to make it, where they're like, why the hell is this so hard? Where they probably contemplated a lot of dark things that they never thought they would ever. Marriage, relationships take work. Yeah, it isn't by accident. I appreciate all the kind words. I really do. But you have to understand that picture right there, one of the lowest points in my life. And I went on when I went to, going right back to the start of this conversation, when I said I didn't go to, when I stepped into St. Louis last year and I just knew I was in the wrong place. I came within a hair of divorce. That may shock people. Now, it might have just been a fleeting idea, but for a moment in time while I was in Ottawa, that was a thought in our marriage. And when we went to a couples retreat, because, I got to give Vance a ton of credit. If it wasn't for the conversations that weekend, I would have never taken my wife to a couples retreat. I went to a couples retreat with her. We had to talk about a lot, and that was uncomfortable at times. But we both agreed the hardest part of our marriage had been Ottawa, right? It pushed us to the brink. One of the men I admire, I don't admire everything that comes out of his mouth because at times he's a media personality. But Jordan Peterson is a man, if you go listen to him, I've got to witness it on stage, and it was so cool on stage. Him
Mm.
dance with his wife. He talks about date nights, and Tammy will talk about it too. How much effort they put into dancing. And then through COVID, they come within if I was my hair probably looks like a strong rope to where they came within, right? Him in a coma in Russia, her on stage, was it 4 or 3 folks of cancer? Like, basically, they lost touch with each other, didn't think, and when they got back, they didn't know each other. That's basically how they talk about it. And what brought them back together? Dancing. Because and all of a sudden, now they're starting to, oh, this is who this is, and on and on. And marriage is a lot of work. So once again, I really appreciate the compliments. I just know the work isn't done. Like, I look into the future. I have the Cornerstone Forum. It comes up in May, and it's this idea that I put together over doing a bunch of shows that looks into the future. not too far in the future, because I don't want to get into spacecraft and aliens and flying off to Mars, but it looks into the near future and it tries to pinpoint some problems we're going to see. And every time I think about my marriage, I'm like, even if everything goes smooth, we're both going to lose our parents at some point.
Mm-hmm.
If that's the first thing that happens. And then on my side, I'm the youngest of 5 siblings, or 4. I got 4 older siblings. If everything just works out the way it is, I'm going to lose 4 siblings. She's going to lose a brother. Those are not going to be easy things.
Mm-hmm.
That's all going to take work. And so marriage, being a father, all these things are going to push you to the brink. And I literally just called Vance like 2 days ago, going, why the hell does it have to be so hard? Because one of my kids had just pushed me to the absolute edge of my ability to think through problems. And that's probably the stuff people don't see, right? You see how things when they're smooth, and you don't understand all great marriages, all great human beings have moments in time where they get knocked down to the absolute brink of who they are.
I think about trying to find a relationship now, and I am on the market. And I think about these kinds of things, and you talk about having a wife that you guys, to some degree went through hell with, right? Being able to go through battle together, and it feels like at times I fluctuate in and out between thinking like quit being a wuss, and at times of like, I don't know if those types of relationships are around anymore where you can go through battle with your partner.
They're around.
You think that still happens?
Oh yeah.
Do you think my generation can get through those?
Yes.
Get on the other side? Why do you have a very optimistic and resounding yes? What makes you say that?
This is once again, I've never been great with analogies, folks, so forgive me. But me and pizza don't do well together. Things happen in my body that I will not explain.
Amen.
Okay?
I hear you.
Cut out the pizza, the problem goes away. You guys are a brilliant generation. Get out of your heads. Go to work. Start doing some things. And I don't mean to say that you're not. It's like some of this is you're going to run into somebody and they're going to light you up. And then you're going to realize they're not perfect, that you got to work through the quirks. The quirks is actually what makes it enjoyable. It's insane that yes, it is absolutely there. It is absolutely there. And if you can't find it in St. Louis, stop, like, I don't mean stop looking for it. I just mean give yourself a little bit of grace to just go explore. And maybe something will find you, right? Like I didn't go to Wisconsin to look for my wife. That is not how that happened. And I met her the first day. She was the first girl I met on campus, and I gave her the cold shoulder because I was too cool for school. She will tell you about that. She will probably also tell you that she thought I was into her roommate, not her, right? And you watch how the story plays out, or at least in my mind as I replay it, right? And it's just, it was right there from the start. I just didn't see it, didn't notice it. And I was thinking the other day, like a lot of men, the one thing that I don't know how this happened is a lot of men will get married, have kids, and I think fantasize about, I don't know, Pamela Anderson, or I don't know who your generation is. That sounds terrible. I don't, who's the good looking girl right
You've
now?
dated yourself. You've dated yourself.
I don't know who is it? Who's the girl that's like, oh, this is the one right now?
Oh God, maybe I don't even know their names, but there's one.
Margot Robbie is
sure,
the one.
That's you can say we can say that, but that's but in any case,
I'm like ridiculously attracted to my wife. It's like
Mhm.
it's probably unhealthy. I don't know, but I mean in the best possible way. I don't know. It probably isn't unhealthy. I thought about that the other day because I used to be attracted to all women. I mean, like, and in some sense I still am. I'm not this perfect human creation, right? But I'm ridiculously attracted to my wife. Like, how the heck did that happen? I actually don't know because she does not agree. If she was sitting here, she would argue with me on a bunch of the stuff I've said. One of the things that's happened to me since going full-time podcasting is I don't have a boss. I don't have somebody saying you can't say that anymore, which is really freeing. And at times I'm like, I'm probably offending a lot of people along the way. I have no idea because they don't talk to me anymore, and I don't really care.
Mhm.
But my wife does, and my wife will let me have it from time to time. I love it. I think she gets annoyed with how much I love it now because I'm like, oh, I love that she doesn't agree with me. I love that there's a little sandpaper there. She's just like this wonderful person that can you find it? I'll go back to your question. Absolutely. Do not ever think you cannot find it. I've ran into way too many people that found it in the least likely places, and then realized though once they're together, just dating Jack, like it's gonna take work. It's gonna take you setting aside some of your ideals on what this should be and how it should function, and it could just be as simple as washing dishes. I don't know, or laundry, or whatever. I don't know which one of the things it's gonna trigger you because there'll be things that trigger you. There's things that trigger me too.
This is the challenge I have because I have these ideals in my head and I recognize that I'll have to, but I'm what like it feels like what are unrealistic ideals today were not unrealistic 50 years ago, but now I'm made to believe that I'm crazy for wanting these types of things in a relationship. And so I am figuring out where am I crazy and where am I not is difficult. But in any case, yeah. Well, this we'll
say wait. Say that again. Say what you just said one more time for me.
Okay. The ideals that I have in my head of what a relationship could look like, I'm struggling to figure out whether those are crazy or not because it seems like.
So what are your ideals that you think? Why are you struggling with whether or not they're crazy?
I'm struggling with them because I think the constant message that we are getting fed today and everything from culture to governance to everything is like, men take a back seat and not so many words. Don't be a man. Like, these things are being fed to us in multiple different ways. And so some of them are easy for me to be like, no, I'm not going to listen to that. But then there's other things where it's like, maybe I am being a little too hardcore on this ideal that I have, and then I slowly kind of get beat down from it. But then I look at relationships that I admire, and I'm like, well, the few relationships that I see where I'm like, oh, this is actually, these people are 50 years old and still in love. They don't follow any of the modern messages that I'm being forced down my throat today.
I'd say turn off the narrative. I don't know.
It's hard.
Why?
You can't. I mean, turning off the narrative is turning off interaction with other people or isolating myself into an echo chamber.
Yeah, but you want a relationship that's maybe a little more traditional than today. You're not saying you don't want a woman to work. What you're saying is, I want my wife to be okay with me being a man.
Yeah. Totally. That's one of the pieces for sure.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. I don't know. Like to me, I'm married to one of the most badass women on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
She is fantastic. And she doesn't want to be told what to do. And in fairness, I don't want to tell her what to do.
Mm-hmm.
She carries the water lots of days of the week. And on other days, she gets to sit down and I do all the heavy lifting.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's a very balanced thing. But as a man, somebody touches her, I'm going to break them. Somebody tries to mess with her or my kids, I'm going to break. That's my job. It's very simple to me.
Mm-hmm.
I have no problem hurting people if they're going to try and hurt the ones I love. That's about as black and white as it gets. And if you can't find that, you're probably just in an area that doesn't value that. I was probably what I would say. To me, like I could be wrong on that. I just think like I don't know. Up until I met Mel, I met a lot of women that would love to run over you. I just chose I'm not going to be run over. I don't like that. I don't like being talked over. I don't like those things. And if that bothers them, that's okay with me. I'm just gonna carry on with life. This isn't gonna bother me. I don't know. That's a tough one, Jack. Tough and not tough. I just go like turn off the narrative. Like it's also like I'll come in a tinfoil hat world. Come in with me, folks. It's also the safe and effective. If I say it enough times, it's true. If I say that a boy can be a girl enough times, it's true. It's not. You're all insane. It's not safe and effective.
Well,
Boy cannot be a girl.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you. I'm not ashamed. I'm not afraid to even state that very clearly right
Free
here.
drugs, I don't think is probably a good idea. That's probably a poor idea.
Here's the I'll let you go here just a second, but here's the tricky thing for me is I have found the community that supports that, and that's the Christian community at this coffee shop, right? Like all the women there valued. We're all aligned in that sense, but they don't want to date a guy who is not a Christian.
They don't want to date. Well, I don't know. Okay, so this is where we started this conversation. Your audience hadn't heard it because I found it hilarious that you're hanging out at a Christian coffee shop and you recognize that, but you don't believe in God. Essentially, am I right? You believe in Judeo-Christian values, essentially.
Yeah,
but you don't believe in the ultimate that Jesus Christ is the Lord and Savior. And right, I don't want to. I want to make sure I'm getting it right.
Yeah, and I kind of do the Peterson thing here, where it's like what Jesus represents is Lord and Savior to some degree. But yes, do I believe that there was a human being that walked on water and turned a few pieces of bread into thousands? I do not believe that. No.
Right. Okay.
And they need me to believe that in order to, in order to be whatever.
Then maybe that just isn't the person for you, is what I would say, right? Like, I mean, you stare at me, and I can sit here and say, Jesus is my Lord and Savior.
Mm-hmm.
He did walk on water. He did turn bread into, food for thousands. He did all those things. I believe that. And if Shaun of your age heard me say that, his mouth would be on the floor going, what are you talking about? And I want to tell you this, Jack, because when I started dating Mel, she's Catholic. She wanted me to go to church, and I told her it was a deal breaker. I'm just not interested. I'm not interested in going to church. I'm not interested in being indoctrinated in your crazy la-la land. Okay? Now it's Shaun at 38 dragging, and I don't mean that my wife didn't want to go back to church, folks. I just mean, like, you can imagine me pulling as far as I can run the other way to turning around 180 and going, I'm going to church. I'm going to put a picture of me praying on the wall. And having to be okay with how uncomfortable that made me feel to even talk like this, it has taken time. So you want to marry a woman with values similar to yours. And if they can't get over the fact that right now you're not okay with saying Jesus is the Lord and Savior, I don't know. To me...
But we have the same values. We still have the same values.
No. Yeah, I understand.
Right,
but it's like... on a really, once again, what did I say about me and analogies? It's like you can't pick up your laundry, and that drives them to the point where you can't coexist. You're like, this just, you're great everywhere, but we have this one thing we can't find a way to get around. It's like, I don't know. Like, there's probably the one thing I can say for certain at 38 is that I'm pretty certain I'm going to learn things as I grow. I'm just gonna continue to learn, because what I've done over the past 5 years has been insane to me. And when I watch you, I go, well, I know that for certain for you, is that as time goes on and you have a woman that you get married to, and assuming you have kids and everything else, you're going to change. You're going to look at problems differently. You may not look at God as Santa Claus, as you told Vance. You may see different things. You may not. I don't mean to put anything on you. I don't think one experience, once again, is the formula to this is how things go. What I do think is by having some experiences that are seasons of life, like they change the way you will look at the world, you may start to notice different things. So while you're sitting in this coffee shop and while you're meeting these women that believe in God, it's interesting because I married a woman who believed in at least Judeo-Christian values. She's devout Catholic, and yet I told her right off the hop, I'm not interested. If if somebody loves you and believes in God, then they should believe God has a plan for you. And maybe it just isn't your time yet. I don't know why that is. I have no idea. I can't see the design of what's going on. And yet here I sit. I'm going, man, I made a lot of stupid choices. So I'm not saying it's I guess what I'm saying is I don't think it should be a deal breaker that you're saying what you're saying and a woman goes, I can't marry you, you don't believe in God. I'm like, well, chances are you dodged a bullet. Right? Because where you sit, you're pretty open to listening to people and hearing different ideas and wrestling with things. And as life goes on, I think, I could be wrong on this, you're going to adjust how you see things. And if that's the case, then those women should be all about it, because then they should see, well, if God truly is, real, he has a plan for us, and maybe, and you can go down this road. I feel like I'm a preacher right now.
Yeah, I hear you. I totally hear you. I think it would be silly it'd be silly of me to not want to have the capacity for changing my perspective about things, even this thing that I'm feel adamant about right now. But yeah, I'm totally with you. Totally with you. But cool. Okay. Well, you're out of here. You got to call it you have a podcast at 11. I love this podcasting ecosystem we have of just riffing podcasts and conversations. But cool. Is there anything yeah, go ahead.
No, thanks for having me on, Jack.
Cool.
Hopefully I didn't ramble too much. People have to forgive me. I sit in the host chair all the time. So when you ask, I'm finding I'm becoming more opinionated as the day goes by. And I don't know if that's a healthy thing or not, but regardless, I would love to hear what your audience says. They can call me crazy. It's quite all right.
Right on. And we have we can find you on Shaun Newman podcast, right? I mean, that's
Shaun Newman podcast, Twitter, X, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Rumble, Apple, Spotify. Yeah, come find me.
All the fixins. Cool. Thank you for coming on, Shaun.
Thanks for having me, Jack.